Hello guys, welcome to the channel. I am Paul from FLUTTER Developers Core. So today we'll be going through the series 2 of deserializing your JSON object to that object. So in this lesson we'll be talking about getting our logic that does the data fetching for this list of users you're getting to a separate class that actually does that for us, and we'll be using the provider package. But right now we are using the feature builder and we are accessing a class called user API, and that's the method. There is a static method which we actually get from here. So we'll be separating all of this to a separate class and managing that. So if you have not watched the previous series of this, you can go to my YouTube channel over here, FLUTTER Developers Core, and you go through this. You know how we get to this point. So let's get started. So the packages we'll be using is HTTP and provider. So if you have not added that, you import them into your project. So let's go ahead and create our view model. So our view model is responsible for our code logic and everything. So we'll be creating that now and call that view model, and we'll call our next the file user model .dat. So this will be a provider class, and it's gonna be class user model extends change notifier. So in this, if I restart this app, you're gonna see what happens. So I'll try to run this app. I'll try to run it. So you're gonna see what's going to happen here, but in waiting for it to run, let's continue. So in our app over here, if this will be run, a circular progress indicator will show here that is actually getting some data, and so we're going to manage that from a different class. So we'll be using enums. So enums are just name constants that we can use and change our states. So that's we'll call this enum home state, and we're going to call, so there will be a different state for our home state. There's going to be an initial state, there's going to be loading state, there's going to be loaded state, there's going to be also error state. So that's the four states we're going to have in our app. So we're going to initialize that. And call that to be a private variable, and call that first it will be an initial state. So actually going to use our getter, and so we can access it outside our user model because it's a private variable. So it's going to be home state, and we're going to get the home state over here, and we can give this a type. So that's what we'll be having And the next thing we'll be having is now we'll try to get our data from the user API, which is on the services folder. So this is actually a static method on the user API that gets the users on this URL. So what we're going to do, we're going to define this class as a singleton class, so it doesn't have to always be initialized. So I'm going to refactor this. I'm going to refactor this to a singleton class. So I'm going to define a static variable of instance of this class, and what next we'll be defining is also a private constructor for this class, because the constructor is actually what makes us to always initialize a class. So it's going to be a private constructor, so you don't have to always be initializing it. So the next part of it is you're going to get this, going to be static and user API gets instance, and we're going to return this instance over here. But first, before we return that, we're going to check if our instance is null. If it's equals to null, we're going to reinitialize this to our constructor over here. So that's it. So we are now going to go to our user model class, and what we're going to do there, this is going to be a feature, the method we're defining, and it's going to be a void which doesn't return anything, and it's going to fetch all users. So what this URL does is it gets all users. So I'm going to run this. So you see there are several of users here, so we're going to deserialize it. That's why I say you should go and to our previous lesson and watch this. So that's it. So this is going to be an synchronous method, and we're going to define a final variable users, and we're going to call on the user API singleton class, and we're going to import that user API. Then import that in the instance and get all users. So before we can access the users over here, we are going to have a list of users, so we can use it in our UI classes. So it's going to be users and a list of users. So we're going to import this, and I'm going to, because this is a feature that returns list of users, I'm going to await for this. So it has to wait for this to finish before it runs any other thing. So what we'll be doing next is this is now a list of users, so we're going to reassign this to this. So I'm going to call this API users, so we can actually differentiate it and that. So it's going to fetch the users and add them to here. So at first we're going to make this a try and class, a try and catch block. For this, we're going to give this a try and class block, so we can catch any error that comes out from it. So what we'll be doing next is we will, at the beginning of this, when this is launched, we are going to call our home state, and it's going to be, we're going to give a state, loading state, when this is, and if this is done, we're going to give it a loaded state, and if this experience any error, we're going to give it an error state. So, and we're going to call notifier listeners. So that's it for this class. Let's go to our UI class. So in our UI class, our code has actually break, so we're going to refactor this. We're going to clean this up and clean this up, so our code looks like this now. So we are going to clean all of this, and at first I'm going to add a builder to this, a builder class. So that's what we're going to do, and our next we're going to, for us to use the user model, we're going to use change notifier provider, so it can actually provide that. So we can use change notifier provider, and there's a method called create, and we're going to assign this to our user model. So that's it. And in our builder class, we're going to, yes, where we're going to have a final and call it model, and our provider, call it model. So provider of context. Now this goes into this, and we are able to get all the functions we want to use from this class. So give it the type, so now we can use it. So we have different states in our class, in our user model, so we're going to use that state. So if we're going to use if else statement on this, if model home state is equals to is loading state, so we are going to return center widget and child of circular progress indicator. Then I'm going to copy and paste this, and this will be our error state, and it's going to be a text an error occurred. So this is the default. If all of this happens and it passed through all of this, and we actually have the get the loaded state, and we should define here final users. So I'm going to zoom this a little bit in case you're not seeing it. Okay. So model users. So that is it. So we'll try to restart this and see what we have. Okay. We have restarted that. So we'll restart. Okay, sorry, we didn't launch this. So in the constructor of user model, I'm going to call fetch users. So this runs on start of this class. So I'm going to save that and restart our app, hot restart it. So this should work. So yeah, it works very fine. So it works very fine. So for us to really see the progress indicator, I think what we'll do is we're going to await for some seconds, which is a little bit fast. Give it a duration of, let's give it a duration of 5 seconds, and that's, so it will wait for 5 seconds before it actually loads this. And also I'm going to define a string called message. So whatever error message we have, we're going to display it on our UI. So here, over here, I'm going to initialize this to this. I'm going to initialize this to that and go to our UI class and interpolate our message, so it can reflect if we have any error. Call it message. Okay, I'm going to rerun this. So it waits and load and display our users. So what we'll be doing, so we can actually see an error. I'm going to get this out and try to run this, so we actually get an error. So we're going to wait for that, and it's going to send us back okay, no host. Okay, this is the error it gets. So that's it for this. That is it for this tutorial for today. That's it for this tutorial. So if you like the tutorial, you can give me some thumbs up and support me by subscribing. And that's all. Thank you, and stay tuned for more.